This is the Money Mike Syndicated Radio Podcast. You want it, you got it. Stephanie White, press conference. Welcome back to the dance, Miss Stephanie White, head coach of the Indiana Fever. We're going to break it down for you, and we're going to let you know what we see. The press conference kicked off, and welcome back, Stephanie White, right? No doubt about it. Stephanie White is now the head coach of the Indiana Fever, and he took the podium. You know, it's an interesting story with Stephanie White. I always tell you, a picture says 1,000 words. You know, you come out of broadcasting, you coach the Fever, you come back, you get the opportunity to do it again. Now you got Clark, right? And I listened to the press conference, and I listened to what Kelly had to say. I listened to what Stephanie White had to say, and you guys know me. Old Money Mike always got a different take, got a different spin on it, right? So here's the deal. Here's what I'm going to tell you guys right now, right? Just after watching that press conference and hearing Stephanie White speak and listen to everything she said, right? So what did Stephanie White do in that press conference yesterday? She covered what she felt the core goal of the team was core goal of what the Indiana team would be. She talked a little bit about how they would play, talked a little bit about roles, right? So Money Mike's already ahead of the game on that because I already know that, like I told you yesterday, Chicago's going to get defined in the roles. So what do the Indiana Fever have to do? They have to get defined in the roles. But so she kind of gave us everything that was scripted out. But here's the deal. Here's what's really going down because I like to go behind the scenes and say, wait a minute now, right? What's really going on with this press conference? And I'm going to tell you right now. You got a situation where Kelly chose Stephanie White, and I'll be the first to say Stephanie White is over her head right now, right? Stephanie White is over her head, right? So she's trying to pencil her way through. And, this one remind me of a movie when I looked at Kelly. And Kelly's smart, right? Kelly's different, but once you've had a taste of the NBA, the WNBA is super simple, right? There's nothing confusing about the WNBA. NBA is more complex as far as how they approach the game. So you got a situation where Kelly's really, it's like the scene out of the Godfather movie, right? Where they always thought it would be Tatalia, right? But it ends up being Bazzini, right? So you're bringing in Stephanie White, but Stephanie White's over her head on this one. And Stephanie White is a good coach. Stephanie White can do some things that the Indiana Fever needed to do. Kelly had to pick someone, and she chose Stephanie White, right? Who's going to be the most comfortable person I can work with to get done what I need to get done. And that's what I took out of the press conference, right? Because I brought up a trade, right? And so everybody's, you're coming back diamond to shield. So I understand what Kelly is trying to do, right? Because Kelly is leading this charge. Stephanie White doesn't know how to lead a charge like this, right? She knows Stephanie White is not a developer of players, right? Stephanie White, you got to go to a team where you have players that somebody has picked for you, which Kelly's going to do, right? So you get back to it, and you got a press conference that takes off, and let's face it, you got Kelly who's part of the press, right? She's in the media. Okay, so if you got a coach that's in the media, does the media, of course she's gonna know what to say in a press conference, right? So she come out first thing, Clark's generational player, right? So okay, so tell us what I expected to hear from Stephanie White, okay, as the head coach coming in the Indiana Fever. Tell us something we don't know, right? Tell me something I don't know. And I'm going to tell you something right now that you may or may not know, but you're going to find out sooner or later. And when you do find out, it's going to come as a rude awakening to you. Maybe it will. Kelsey Mitchell's not part of this plan, right? So you may have Mitchell in there for a year or two because these roles are going to get defined. And here's what's surprising to me, right? So here you have Stephanie White take the press conference. Stephanie White's a good coach, but this one's a little above her head because she's going up. I told you, you got the agents are getting involved in this. So you're going to hear people try to explain what agents do, and they're going to get into it in the whole 9 yards. I'm a mile ahead of that, right? Because you're going against Clutch, right? So you're not going to beat Clutch and just by saying you got Stephanie White as a coach, right? Because that's not going to happen because it goes deeper than that because now you're getting involved in the grassroots. But I can tell you this, okay, when I heard Stephanie White at the press conference, right? I'm giving you my opinion, but if it turns to truth, I'm giving you the fact. When I hear somebody say we're going to play up tempo and we're going to play fast, you can't play any faster than the Indiana Fever, right? So okay, so now you're telling us something we've already seen, right? Like, are you going to go out there and get 130 points, right? Because the Pacers played the other night, right? They got 130 points. Are you telling us you're going to go get 130? Because the Indiana Fever were already playing fast, right? But somehow, with Stephanie White, what she's not doing, because I look at how the Connecticut Sun, I look at how Stephanie White teams play, right? So how are you going to get a team to do something that you haven't done as a coach, right? So, and this is where it's because the Connecticut Sun were not blazing trails, right? They're trying to play what you call manufactured basketball, right? So Stephanie White doesn't want to come to the press conference and tell everybody we're going to play manufactured basketball, right? We're going to switch the positions around. Everybody's role going to change, right? Caitlin's not going to have the ball in her hands as much as she did before. I mean, you're going to hear that at the press conference. But once the game starts, it's like boxing, right? A fighter can come in and do many things, but once the game starts, it's going to go back to the old tricks, right? So really, there's two things that I can tell you here, all right? And I'm going to get to this, and I really want to make this as plain and as simple when you get to Stephanie right? Because you got to orchestrate out a championship, right? And you need certain players to be in certain roles to do that, right? So what do you got? You got three players show up to the press conference, right? You got three players, right? So you get a new coach, you got the Indiana Fever, and the players are not there for the introductory of the press conference, right? So that tells me right there, okay. And you could be saying, well, they're over here, they're over there. Well, that's great, right? But when she took the podium, here's what I found very interesting. And like I said, I'm going to keep on breaking this down because at the end of the day, I found this very interesting, right? She didn't talk about players, right? She had three players there. But she didn't kind of say, you know what? And for Kelsey Mitchell, man, I can't wait to work with Kelsey Mitchell, right? That's being left out, right? So you got to understand Mitchell's got to weigh this, right? Because when you can do it one or two ways, right? And the way to win a championship, okay, that they're trying to win, it's got to be full distribution of the basketball, right? You can't have that much usage out of Caitlin Clark. But Stephanie White can't tell you that, right? But here's who can, right? So when I get an opportunity to get in there and I hear what people have to say and I hear what they're saying, I see how they're doing. The biggest thing the Indiana Fever really are just so happy about, right? Because nothing's really changed, right? The Fever hadn't been in the playoffs in 16 years, right? Or, excuse me, since 2016, right? So the fans grew impatient, right? They grew impatient. And to the Indiana Fever, you know what? I really, really want to say first class on your press conference, right? You're getting together, you get in there, and that's how a press conference run. I mean, the picnic tables that the WNBA has been using. I mean, the league's better than that, right? So the Indiana Fever is the flagship. They're going to come out. They're going to have the PR person let you know what's going to happen, how the rotation's going to go, and what your questions could be, right? Because you can't just have people just show up and just sit down and start talking, right? It doesn't make sense. So you got all three, right? And you got the CEO, the COO, and you got a coach, right? So they got to go figure it out. But the Indiana Fever fans, right? So I'm an Indiana Fever fan myself, but I got to be objective, right? So you're not going to never like when I be objective because I have to be objective on the 49ers too. And I love the 49ers, but man, I mean, Shanahan, you'd wore me out, right? You get rid of Steve Wilkes, and now you're 4-4 with no defense, right? So it didn't work, right? So everything that we did progressively, now we got injuries and falling down. So you got the Indiana Fever. The fans wanted so bad to get rid of Christie sides, right? You wanted Lynn Dunn gone, right? So you gotta accept and say, well, what did I wish for, or how did that happen, right? So you bring in Kelly, and what Kelly's been to NBA, right? This is all about NBA basketball in Indiana Fever and NBA basketball with the Chicago Sky. Okay, that's the two right there, right? So you got them going both, and the Indiana Fever are gonna play like the Indiana Fever, right? So you got their style, and yeah, I mean Kelsey Mitchell had a great year last year, but that doesn't really fit the way Christie sides. I mean that fits Christie's size, but that doesn't fit Stephanie White, right? Because what happens with Mitchell? Mitchell goes off schedule, right? But it works for Mitchell. But when you get to Stephanie White, what she's trying to accomplish, that doesn't really work. That's like salt and pepper, right? So you got to look at that and say, okay, what do we got? And then on the other side, I'll tell you another thing they're going to have problems with, right? Because I'm going down the middle. I like both, right? I like Chicago. I like the stepping. I like the 50-yard line. I like to go down there and just have a good time. Had a many years, had a good time in Chicago, right? Then I like Indiana because Indiana's just all about the basketball, right? It's whoever's got the highest IQ. And you got to understand something, right? So you got the ghost of the Indiana Pacers, right? Larry Bird's coached the Pacers. I mean, you're talking legends, right? But Chicago's got something good that's going down, right? You can't really stop it, okay? And the reason you can't stop it because it's not there for you to be stopped, right? So you get this thing, and you're going up against some heavyweights, folks. Let me just tell you, going up against some heavyweights, guys who have been in the NBA, have won championships. This is what I'm telling you. This is over, okay, Stephanie White's head, right? This is not a game that you're playing now, but who's going to balance that out? I mean, you got Kelly, the president, is saying, "Look, we're going head to head. Chicago Sky, one of us is not going to the WNBA championship, right? Because you can't both be in the same division." And I'm telling you, they ran neck and neck now. So now you got a whole nother core that's coming at you, right? And so you're trying to break off of this core, right? So you're trying to go beat somebody that's got so many doggone championships everywhere he built, right? So you got to counteract that. That's why I tell you, if you want to look, okay, at Tyler Marsh and you want to line up Stephanie White, I'm gonna tell you, Tyler Marsh is miles ahead of Stephanie White, right? Stephanie White's just getting in and getting her first taste of what it's like to be in the NBA. Well, Tyler's already been there. Becky's already been there, right? So you're trying to get this thing complicated, and you got to fit in players. That's why you guys balked at my trade. I'm telling you right now, the Indiana Fever don't have a bench, right? So you get as good as you want to get, right? You can go all the way back. You can hire 100 Stephanie Whites, right? But if you don't have the players, right? And so here's the deal. I like Diamond the Shield, okay? And here's the reason why. Diamonds and Shields has won a championship, right? That's called championship experience, okay? That's why you heard Kelly. Kelly's running this whole ship, folks. Stephanie White is just somebody that she had to handpick to do what the president Kelly wanted to do. And Kelly's working on both sides of the building, right? Because what do you got? You got the Pacers last year went to the Eastern Conference Finals, right? So they're trying to get it in, and she still has relationships over there. So you're trying to put all these pieces together to get the players that you need to get to win the championship. The Indiana Fever right now don't have the players to win the championship, right? What you saw was 3 players. That's it. That's it, okay? You saw 3 players, and then if you want to count Mitchell in as a half, then you got 3.5, right? But that right there, with Mitchell being gone and not even bringing up Mitchell's name in the press conference, that just told me what was going on. That's not a mistake, folks. You don't make. Let's put it like this: Kelly doesn't make mistakes. All right, Kelly is like I don't know, grandfather, father was a general or something, somewhere in the United States military. Because she's not coming out here to make a mistake. She's coming out here to do something. So she gets Stephanie White, broadcaster. Yeah, been in there. Okay, bopped around. Went over there, coached for the Indiana Fever. Didn't work out. Went over there and coached for Vanderbilt. Okay, then circle back, came back again, right? And so now you make your way up to Connecticut. You get up there, and you're gonna play this way. But you had an opportunity to win a WNBA championship last year. You didn't do it, right? So at the end of the day, okay, you're still trying to do something you can't do. So and I'll tell you, I really got to let you know on this one, folks, because the Indiana Fever, you got to understand, they're coming out of a bad relationship, right? A bad relation. So anything that anybody says is going to be better than what Lynn Dunn and Christie Side say, right? I mean, let's be honest with each other, right? But that doesn't mean you're walking the forward. Now, here's what you got in America, and this is not going to end today, tomorrow, or the next day, right? So you got the Indiana Fever who are building into something. You got Kelly who's leading the charge, right? Leading the charge by a country mile, right? Because she's got it mapped out of what she wants, and everybody's going to follow her lead, right? So she's going up against some heavyweights, and she knows it, and she's not afraid of them or anything like that. I mean, this is all part of the business. It's called competition, right? So you got to figure out, okay, who's going to lead this competition, and how's this one really going to work, right? Because at the end of the day, you got to go in there and win ball games, right? You got to figure out how you're going to win these games and how's all this going to work itself out, because it's not easy to win games. So Stephanie White's going to give it her best shot. Now you got Caitlin Clark. That's going to be another task, right? Because you got Caitlin sitting there, and you got Boston, and you got Lexi Hull, right? And you're going to need somebody else, because Lexi Hull can play defense. Lexi Hole's really a 3 and D, but the 3 and D is supposed to knock down 3-point shots. So she's getting better in that role. But you got to have somebody else come in because the way Lexi Hole plays, Lexi Hole's good for about 22, 24 minutes a game, right? Because she plays so hard on the defense. So you got to get somebody. You don't like Diamond DeShields? Well, you're going to have to go out there and pick out another 6'1" combo guard because that's what the position takes for the Fever to win a championship, right? And the Fever don't have the players, right? So now you got to put them in, you got to coach them, and all these players haven't played together, so you're really recycling the barn, right? But that's okay. That's a part of the business too. Here's the deal that I like, right? Okay, so you get into the Simon family, all right, and everybody wants to talk about okay the Indiana Fever and the Simon family and how they built the culture, did this, that, and the other, right? So you get into Chicago, right? So you got to ask yourself, all right, well, Mike Alter's on the other side too, right? And this guy's been through the grind, right? He's been fighting and fighting and fighting. And here's the thing that I like about Mike is Mike said, look, here's the deal. I can't get it done. I've tried to be a sole proprietor of this thing. I'm not even close, right? Everybody I hired's failed out of the box, right? So what does he do? He steps it up, right? He says, look, I'm going to give up. He's going to do a raise, right? He's going to do a raise just like the WNBA did a raise for 75 million, right? He did a capital raise too, right? So you got to go out to the investors. Except he was smart, right? I mean, hey, Mike, I'll tell you, you make a move like this, Mike, I'll give you credit all day long, right? Because you go in there and you're giving up something, but you're bringing in an NBA champion. You got Dwayne Wade, you got Shaquille O'Neal. You think those guys, how many championships, okay, do they have? I mean, they even won championships together, right? So at the end of the day, and you got the reason I say that, Angel Reese and you got Shaquille O'Neal, right? So Shaquille O'Neal, these guys are veterans. So I ask you this, right? Because at the end of the day, here, what am I trying to really say that really can make sense? You came off a bad relationship, I get it, right? You got Kelly. So the real deal is can Kelly outdo Dwayne Wade, right? Now that's a tall task for Kelly, right? That's a tall task, right? Because Dwayne's got a lot of championships. And the thing is, you're not going to run Dwayne Wade away, right? Because he's from Chicago. He's from Marquette, right? So what does that mean, right? Because I'll tell you what Marquette means today. My best friend, who is actually on the foundation board, Dr. Thomas Reed. Okay, we've been friends since we've been in college and for over 40 years, right? So who does he mentor? He mentors Shaka Smart, right? The head coach at Marquette, right? So you got Shaka, then you got Dwayne Wade, is homegrown, right? So he's revitalizing that program, and you got to look at that. And him and Shaka, I always call him up. Hey, I saw Shaka, and Shaka is a wizard of a coach, right? I mean, he doesn't coach women's basketball. You talk about a teacher, right? So you got somebody you're going against Dwayne Wade. That's not an easy task, folks. And let's just be honest, right? Because the press conference was good, but these are champions, right? So it's hard if you get a picture and you look in the eyes and it says 1,000 words, right? So you got three people looking all at the same eyes and going, "What are we going to do?" Right? So that's called teamwork, dream work, right? So the Indiana Fever got a dream team, okay, that's set up. Okay, you got Kelly, you got Amy, you got Stephanie, you got Caitlin Clark, right? But on the other side, you got this guy over here, and he's the fuse and all that. I'll tell you what you got. I'll really break it down. I mean, because you got Boston, but if they get Camilla Cardosa developed the way she's gonna develop, Boston's not gonna be able to do anything with that. That's a big body gonna space down and it's gonna get you on the block. And that one is gonna be tough, right? Because here's a difference, right? So when you get into it, and here's a difference, right? And this is where you got Stephanie White's coming out and she's going to coach this, right? She's going through the press conference, and these are the things. We're great, generational player, great organization, knows everybody in the organization, knows everybody in the building. It's a family reunion, right? It's a family reunion for her, right? So all that's great because you haven't played any games, right? So all that's great because everything you're doing right now is speculation, right? Because you don't have any players, right? So and that's okay. That's the WNBA. I mean, half the teams in the lottery don't even have coaches, right? But they're going to draft anyway, right? They're going to go pick these players. But at the end of the day, Stephanie White has got to do something she's never done, right? Now, does that mean she's capable of doing it? Absolutely. I mean, if you got somebody, okay, like Kelly, right? You got to understand Kelly's mindset. It is different, all right? She's like, we're gonna go in here, we're gonna fight this out, and she's working both ends, right? Because you still have relationships in the NBA, but this is gonna be Stephanie White's first experience of NBA coaching and how it's done, right? So at the end of the day, she's going to have to adjust, right? Because right now, the way she entered that first press conference, I'd come out of that. You just cut a lot of players, right? You cut a lot of players. You told everybody on the Indiana Fever, I got three, maybe three and a half if I add Kelsey Mitchell, but the rest of you, I don't really need you, right? Because there's no use for you, right? Because you're not going to win us a championship. And you got to digest that with the Indiana Fever. Indiana Fever is going to have to digest that objectively as fans. And I like the Fever, but objectively, I gotta understand they don't have any players and they don't have a bench, right? And if you don't have any production off the bench, that's going to be hard. Now you're saying you want to go get players to fit a culture, right? So let's talk about the culture, right? Because that's an NFL term, really. It's not an NBA term, really, because the building's not big enough. The reason the NFL does it because when you hire an NFL coach, you got to forklift about 100 people, right? So he's got to bring his own staff in, his own administration, all right? And that's why the NFL, they call it the building, right? So you got to look at this and say, how many championships do we got in the building? Who's won them, right? So you look at it, Lynn Dunn's won a championship, which means Kelly's won, right? But Stephanie White hasn't, right? So this is her first dance. So they're going to piece this together, right? But you're going to get some heavyweights in the NBA. I mean, you got to understand, you got to get the player to execute where you need them to. And these have got to be some special players because you're talking about changing the culture. Now, let's talk about culture. Because I want to just get this over and get it over now. So if you're listening to me, you can hear it. This is the Money Mike Syndicated Radio Podcast. We're powered up by Fanatics. Okay, Indiana Fever want a culture and a culture of America, right? So what does that get interpreted to? Okay, that means they want to have a white culture. That doesn't mean they want to have a white culture. They just want to have people that understand and play the game without any additional drama, right? They just want to focus on the game, go home, do whatever you do. Listen, when you leave the Indiana Fever building, don't embarrass us, right? That's what they're saying, right? Don't get on social media. That's why you heard Kelsey Mitchell and Erica Wheeler, bless their heart, but Erica Wheeler, you're not going to be part of this, right? So, I mean, you got to face reality. They only got three players, three and a half if you count the other. They're going to be filling in spots. It's going to be a brand new team next year, really. And so you got a culture where it's America. They're getting it. I mean, it's popcorn, and it's apple pie, right, with vanilla ice cream, right? That's the culture. That when you say culture, you got to understand that the people that you're speaking to, they may not understand what you mean. The culture is changing the culture in the building, in the facility. Everything you do is a championship way, right? So when you talk about culture, then you got to go over to the other side. This is why this is so fascinating to me, why the rivalry makes sense for the WNBA and the NBA and everybody's associated, right? Because really what you got here, this is like the Bears and the Packers, right? So think about it. This is the Bears and the Packers, right? So you got Chi-Town, right? And you got a culture, African-American community, right? That's predominantly Chicago, right? And then you go over to the Packers. Well, they're just making nothing but good cheese and good pizza, right? But they got a different culture, right? The Packer fans and the Bears fans, okay, they're going two different ways. And somebody's going to own somebody in this, okay? And because they're in the same division. So it's not going to be an equal thing like it always been. It's going to be like, well, you may lose five straight. You may be like Kyle Shanahan and the Kansas City Chiefs, right? Kansas City, they won in the WNBA as well. But the deal is, you may lose 5 or 6 games in a row to one team, right? Because you don't know what the other is going to do and how it's going to all shake out, right? Because the Packers and the Bears, this one here is like, Aaron Rodgers, and stay tuned on him because he's going to get rolling here on the Jets. That's just the way he plays, right? So when Aaron walks around with Chicago Bears, he's like, I own you guys. You guys are nothing, right? You ain't nothing. So one of these teams are going to own it. Is Stephanie White going to be able to own, okay? I mean, beat them every time I see them, okay, the Chicago Sky, or are the Chicago Sky going to own the Indiana Fever, okay? And this causes teams championships, really. You know why this will cause teams championships with Stephanie White? That's why I say Stephanie White's got to digest some of this because you're going to be over your head in this, right? Because one of you guys is going to stop the other from getting the championship, right? So you got two of the best teams. The two top teams in the WNBA are in the same division. That's going to be the breaker. That's going to break your back right there because whoever wins between those two in that playoff game is going to go on and represent, man, oh man, one of you going to be at home. And it ain't going to be a one-time occurrence. They're not going to go back and forth. One of them is going to have pure dominance over the other. Okay? And that is the truth. Stephanie White, I give it to you. Let me tell you what went down, folks. This was a good one. I loved it, but it is what it is. Stephanie White's the new head coach of the Indiana Fever. Broadcaster, been in the booth, knows the game, right? Ain't nothing to it. Ain't no party like a Clark party. That's right. You want a party? You like your leather? I love it. But let's see if we get it done one-on-one. All right, those two have got to have some synergy. You got Michael Alter saying, hey, what are we going to do? This how we going to do it. I got D. Wade, Big Shaq. Let's get this done. This is the WNBA. And you know you got old Becky. That's right. Old Becky Hammond does what she does, produced out the coaching tree, Tyler Marsh. That's right. So we're going to head on up to Indiana. I thought it was a Godfather movie. I looked at Kelly, and man, oh man, it wasn't. It was Bozzini. Kelly's a sharp ticket. You got a general here that's ready to battle against the men, the clutch. You know what? In XL Sports, Jeff. Indiana Fever, man, they got a divorce. Yes, they did. They changed things around. The game is a game, and this is the NBA, not the WNBA. Stay tuned. You know, you got Kelsey. I don't know how that one's going to shake out. Are they going to be together? Are they going to separate? But I know these two. They're going to be there. This is the Money Mike Syndicated Radio Podcast. We'll see you soon. Stephanie White, this is going to be your first opportunity.